Hey guys, it's Faye with Lost and Wandering. It's been a while since I've done a video, like quite a while. But I kind of wanted to kick everything back off with jumping on the YouTube Pagan Challenge bandwagon. Kind of late, but better late than never. So the first one is, how did I find my path? I'm going to try and do this really quickly, because this is one of the ones that I'm just not really like that. There's not really a lot of interesting information in this one, so I'm not really too terribly preoccupied with getting into the detail. But essentially, I mean, I think I've told this story before. I grew up as in a Baptist, Southern Baptist environment. My parents joined a church after they found out they were pregnant with me, and they really wanted to, I guess, raise God-fearing children. So my sister and my younger sister were raised with the expectation that we would grow up to be disciples of God. And I kind of fell off the wagon, obviously. However, I do love Jesus. I love what he represents. I love that. But I'm just not a Christian the way my mom specifically envisioned my sister and I would be. A lot of the reason why I really turned away from Christ is because of the way that I was treated in the church. I don't know what it is about me or my personality or what it is, but people, I guess they see me as kind of a target. I'm really not sure why. And I probably don't help the situation by acting kind of like a victim sometimes, or I used to. But I work really, really hard at separating myself from those types of people now because of my experience there. So I started to do research in, like, my ancestry, because I kind of was hoping that, like, if I go far enough back in my history and then I follow the line along, maybe I'll find something that will resonate with me. And lots of stuff came up, like, lots of, information on paganism and stuff came up, and that was like kind of interesting. And so when I looked at paganism, specifically Wicca used to pop up all the time. So I kind of did a little bit of research on that. I have like an old book of shadows that I was filling up, and I actually filled that book up cover to cover, but it's actually not a book of shadows. It's just kind of like I kind of think of it as a study guide that I was working in. Anyways, I got a lot of information during that time, but I mean, I didn't really do much with it, and I still don't really do much with the information that I have. I have a lot of information, guys, but I just don't really do much with that information, because I find myself more spiritually motivated by in doing the research and learning something new and expanding my knowledge. I do like rituals for like the new and full moon and the Esbats and the Sabbats and stuff like that, but I don't, as I've told you guys before, I've never really cast a spell. Anytime I started to get reared up to cast a spell, it sort of just ended up happening. And I actually went to a psychic a couple years ago who said that I have the ability to make what I want to happen. So I think that that's kind of what it is. So I don't really need like the correspondences so much, and hopefully that's a gift that I pass on to my children. But it might just be me. It might just be a gift that my soul carries with it from age to age. But yeah. So basically, I just kind of like built up a lot of information. In middle school, I met this girl who was my friend up until like this year, actually. And she and I did a lot of research together. She and I practiced together. We learned together, and we grew together, and we were kind of like, even though it was just two people, we kind of called ourselves a coven, and we had like an extra person there for a little while that we like practiced with, and we all dedicated ourselves on the same night, and then we went out and celebrated with a night of rebellion by sneaking out of her house and meeting up with some guys. And we didn't do anything bad. We just snuck out of the house. We went and got some food, and then we came back. It was pretty fun. That's my wild, crazy story. of rebellion as a teenager. But essentially, that's kind of how I started to find my path. And the real interesting story is actually the one that you guys have been a part of this whole time. Is since I started on YouTube, I've really started to hone my craft and really started to like really define who I am as a witch and as a pagan. I've learned more in the almost a year now that I've been on YouTube, with you guys as an accountability team, really, than I have in the last 7 years of research that I did with that friend. I think I've already talked about like how I define my craft, but why don't I just get into it now? I currently identify as an eclectic pagan and a wild witch. So I personally don't feel like I'll ever have need of spells. Meditation tends to work. Just getting the thought and the ritual that goes into preparing for a spell seems to be enough to get that kick. I'm sure maybe if I need like an extra oomph, I might do a spell, but honestly, I've yet to need to do a spell. I think last time I talked about it, I said, oh, I'm getting ready to set up a what was it? Altar for finance and abundance or whatever in my bathroom, because that's where in the house abundance is supposed to work. So if that area of the house is really messy, you're probably not going to see much money. And that was going to be like, I was going to do an entire ritual and like setting up my altar and everything, and I actually never ended up setting up the altar. And not long after that, I got a raise, and a bunch of really cool stuff happened, and everything ended up working out just fine. So that's just another example of how like I've never really had to do a spell, because just thinking about it and putting it out there into the universe tends to kind of bring in what I really want. And some people, I think, do that as well, but if I ever want an extra oomph, I'll probably go through with it. I just have to have enough positive thought, and I guess really what it comes down to is when I start to prepare to do a spell, what I'm really doing is I'm accepting my power in over the things that happen in my life, and in that acceptance, I guess the universe is just like, here, just have it, it's fine. That's all I really needed, is just for you to be a little bit like confident in yourself, I guess. But yeah, so as far as spells go, that's kind of really where I go. I'll probably lean more towards like creating my own incenses and healing medicines and stuff like that. That's probably more what I will lean towards. And to start off with, I'm probably gonna need to like start my own little garden. But as of right now, my balcony is either always completely covered in sun or there's no sun, and so this is probably not the best place to start a garden, I guess. So maybe when I have a house, I'll start my garden. But anyways, yeah, so I define myself as a wild witch. And a wild witch is basically, have you ever heard of a hedge witch, a kitchen witch, or a garden witch, or a green witch? It's kind of a close cousin to all of these things. So it's basically more like nature, and really only using things and tools that occur naturally in nature. And I don't really do that very much right now, because there's not a lot I can find in nature right now. I do find like I do find like rocks and crystals and things like that every now and then, and I will put them on my altar and just kind of let them like ruminate in the energy and add their own energy to my altar. If I really feel that drawn to something, I incorporate it, but probably not very actively. So as of right now, I can't really like rightly call myself a wild witch, but that's kind of where I'm more leaning towards. So once I move out of the city, which is in the works, where Nick and I have made a lot of plans to move to a small town outside of Texas. We'd really like to move somewhere much more liberal. Not that Austin isn't liberal. It's actually pretty liberal, but it's liberal within some conservative rules that have been set into place because we're surrounded by a bunch of conservatives. So it's as liberal as it can be, and it's pretty liberal considering it's Texas. But Nick and I would just like somewhere with more free spirits, not so much this hipster thing that's going on right now. But yeah, and more surrounded by nature. And once I'm out in nature and like basically my nature is my backyard, I think then I can really start to embrace that that energy, and that's something that I would really like to work towards. So I'm kind of like still charting my path to this day, and it's probably not going to stop. And I think that that's the sign of a really healthy spiritual practice, is when you can remember certain chapters of your practice by what you were learning at that time. As long as you're continuing to learn, I think that that's healthy. So I don't really know what else to say about my path. That's just how I define it. I'm very natural. I really much rather like be out in nature and commune with nature and spend time meditating out in nature, and that's really kind of the majority of my practice thus far, is spending time out in nature. Not even so much into the ritual, not so much into the spells. And when I'm not out in nature, I am home collecting information and putting it in my grimoires. So that's just kind of how I am. I'm kind of a librarian wild witch, I guess, is how I would describe my path. And so that's how I got here, and that's where I am now. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'm glad I finally got it to be kind of short, and stay tuned for more YouTube Pagan challenge videos from me. So I love you guys. Keep on wandering. Goodbye.